Welcome back to another episode of Dentment Podcast. Man, I'm excited for this one. Ooh, let's go.
I'm Kara Kelley. I'm CEO of Clinical HR, and I really am an independent advisory firm as an HR business partner for dental practices. I feel like it's an area that practices don't always get the support that they need. They may have an office manager that has some background in HR. They may have a friend that has some background in HR, but they don't typically have somebody who is in the company, certainly not in private practice. And I've even come across some of the smaller group practices about it when you're done. Ones that are the way that I work with clients on any kind of consulting really, but particularly for handbooks is we set up usually 2 to 4, depends on the state. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less, 60 to 90 minute meetings where we're going through section by section so that I hope that they understand that their rights and responsibilities as an employer, without giving legal advice. I'm not an attorney, you don't give legal advice, but from the perspective of HR, what they can and cannot do. And then I also am able to have those conversations of, these are one-on-one meetings if you're looking at getting lawsuits and things like that. Whenever you are past that point where you've already terminated them or it's really about to come to a head, there's not a lot of time to really build that out and protect yourself. And so ideally a week or two before, but I work with clients in all stages of that process. There's different types of bonuses, discretionary and non-discretionary. And you can say all you want that it's at my discretion to give a bonus at all. So they're all discretionary. No, if you have actual metrics for them to hit, goals for them to hit, a certain cadence of whenever you deliver the bonuses, that actually is something for your non-exempt employees that you have to pay an overtime premium. You don't want to be a leader that's feared or one that's their bestie, but you do want to be one that's respected. And so you can be kind and empathetic and have friendly conversations that are not solely about work. You should. It's actually better for productivity because people.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dentment Podcast. Man, I'm excited for this one. Ooh, let's go. We're going to talk about the HR stuff, the important stuff, the stuff that keeps you out of trouble. Well, today we got Mrs. I hope I don't butcher your name. Is it Kara Kelley?
Kara Kelley.
Kara Kelley. At least I said it right. Ms. Kara, thank you so much for coming on. I know it is late where you're at, so I'm super thankful and grateful for your time, and thank you for hopping on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. I was like, man, every time I reach out to people, they're so open to coming on our podcast. I get super excited. I'm like, yes, I'm doing something right. So, well, before we get us started, just kind of, I'll let you, the way I like to do things is just have you introduce yourself to everybody, what you do, why you do it, what is the reason that you do it, what motivates you that you're doing it, because dental industry it's a big industry, right? And everybody have a story. So we just want to know what your story is. So go right ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm Kara Kelley. I'm CEO of Clinical HR, and I really am an independent advisory firm as an HR business partner for dental practices. I feel like it's an area that practices don't always get the support that they need. They may have an office manager that has some background in HR. They may have a friend that has some background in HR, but they don't typically have somebody who is in the company, certainly not in private practice. And I've even come across some of the smaller group practices, ones that are kind of emerging group practices that they don't have a dedicated certified HR professional that's working with them. They're kind of winging it. And so I provide a lot of that support for practices of multiple sizes across the country at this point.
That's amazing. I kick it off. So out of all things in the world, why did you choose employees to deal with?
I fell into it actually in 2009, I guess, when I started going back to school. I wanted to go for a marketing degree and took an HR class as a general business credit, fell in love with it, and switched my major. And as I was working through, I have a business degree with an HR concentration, and I found some HR professionals that I followed that were at the time bloggers. Remember those back in the day where that's the only way we found people was on a blog because Facebook was still just for college people. I found some bloggers that I followed, and I just really just continued to get weirdly passionate, is what I get called now, weirdly passionate about HR. Kind of turned into a little bit of an HR nerd, which fits my personality in general. And whenever I was finishing my degree in 2012, I had been self-employed in a different profession. This was back in the day where we didn't just hire the first person who showed up on time and sober. We actually interviewed them and we looked at what their background was. And I thought to myself that no one wants to hire someone who's been self-employed. So let me just go find a job doing something somewhere for a year and a half, 2 years, whatever, and then finish up my degree. And then I'll go apply to work in some corporation in an HR department and work my way up some ladder there. Yeah, none of that happened. I landed at a dental CPA firm in 2012, and I fell into dentistry. We served dental and other medical professionals that were kind of similar, dermatology, plastic surgery, so on. Similar in the sense that they have some of the fee for service versus insurance doesn't cover everything, or it's kind of hard to work with. And so it was definitely an interesting experience, and I kind of found my people. Those lifelong learners, a little bit neurotic, the ones who need the help. I really liked the clients that we served there, the ones that were really proactive, that wanted to build a practice that was worth working for. And that's kind of how I fell into HR and then fell into dentistry. So now I do dental HR, which is apparently a thing.
That's amazing.
Story.
That's amazing. Well, the one thing that I wanted to ask, because as you know, the HR, as you mentioned, is an important piece of the business, in any business, but I think in dentistry is even more important. As you know, some of the practices, I think the smaller practices, like one practice or two practice owners, some of them have like very limited resource at a time, right? So what is the first HR system or the policy that you recommend for someone that has one or two practices to kind of implement into their system, so they're kind of protecting themselves from everything else that's going to happen?
Probably the most useful, valuable tool or a place you want to put your money whenever you're starting your practice, if you're a single, 2 or 3 location practice, is having a really solid employee handbook. And when I say really solid, I don't mean the one you got from that person that you found on Facebook, because you put it in a group. Where do you get your employee handbooks from? And someone said, oh, here, I'll share mine. That is one of the biggest pet peeves. And it's also one of the biggest mistakes that I see practices make, because every state has different employment laws. Every state has some laws that apply at different head counts. And so you may be over or under committing yourself. You also don't really know who built that handbook. Even if they got it from a reputable company, they might have made changes to it. The office manager might have made changes to it. The spouse might have made changes. These are all things I've seen. I'm now even seeing some that are coming from like practice management consulting firms, that they're telling the client that it came from one of the larger companies, and it did at one point, but they've kind of made it their own, and they're not really doing what they're supposed to with it. It's not really state specific. They're doing like an edit find and switching out the state name, and then giving it to the client and telling him it came from so-and-so company to make it feel secure. And it's just not. And they've made changes throughout it, and they're not compliant. It's a little scary, actually, because some of the practices that I've seen that have done this, and when I say I've seen that have done this, it's a potential client that's saying, I have a handbook from here and I want to see if it's in good shape or if it needs to be updated. So they send it to me, I review it, and I'm like, so about that. I can usually tell in 5 to 10 minutes of a skim whether or not something needs to be overhauled. And that's sadly the story is lately. So it is really well worth investing in having an actually good, solid, compliant handbook that you're keeping updated on a regular basis. I know that can feel like a stretch, but I promise you're tripping over dollars to pick up dimes whenever you try to do a DIY version of it, or get it from somewhere that's not really going to pay attention to the compliance side. So yeah, if you're asking like, what's the number one thing, that for me is going to be one of your number one things, because it drives your culture, it drives your policies, it keeps everyone on the same page, it lays out the benefits. At least the way that I do it, it gives you a very good overview of what you can and cannot do as a leader, and it will really help you build that practice that you want to build, I feel like, long term.
So what is like you mentioned about the compliances, and every state being different, right? Every state have their own laws, regulation. So as somebody, let's say, I have a dental practice, I want to bring you on to kind of put the handbook together. How do you ensure that the dental practices for every state are following those guidelines and the compliance per state? Do you review the state guidelines? Are you aware of them? Do you make those handbook for the practices? So how does that process work?
Yes to all of the above. I have clients, or worked with clients in about 30 states, I think, at this point. I have databases that I subscribe to that have a policy that's written by attorneys. Spend a lot of time in CE. I know y'all have your CE. I'm senior certified through both HRCI, which is HR Certification Institute, and SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management. And so I have my own CE that I have to keep up, and I do. I usually take nearly double what I'm supposed to every time I submit, or at least that seems like it's been the case the last couple of years. I told you I love to learn. So I do spend a lot of time on CE. I do follow a lot of the law firms that will put out information. And then I do actually subscribe to databases where I can go and get policy that's specific to the state as well as specific to the employee headcount. The databases that I work with that provide that initial policy that I then customize for a dental practice, first of all, and then for your dental practice, second, It will give you the guidance of like, when does this apply? Does it apply at certain headcounts? Does it apply to all employers? Are there certain things that we need to be aware of, especially when it comes to things like sick leave laws? Oh my goodness, the states that have them. There's a lot of similarities between the policies that I've seen, but there are always that little one-off weird thing that makes it unique to that state. Making sure that you're able to pay attention to that and figure out, really, when does it apply? How do we apply it? What do we need to do with it? It's not just a matter of giving them the time. Sometimes it's how they are able to take the time. Sometimes it's whether it rolls over, pays out, all of those little nuances that are state to state and headcount specific that I make sure that we research prior to actually putting the handbook in place.
That's amazing. The other thing I wanted to ask you, we at this point, me and Masood, we probably done about 50 plus episode with a lot of people that are in dental. So the one thing that you mentioned that I'm always fascinated about is, as somebody that are in the HR and you do a lot of those, you put the handbook together. How do you kind of help the dental practices to come up with that culture to ensure that it's something that fits within their HR, but it also kind of translate the vision of the owner to everybody else? How do you help them? Do you get preset of something from the owner as far as their culture goes? How do you come up with that culture for them?
I talk to them, quite frankly. I don't send out a questionnaire where I ask, 200 questions of what do you do for this and that, and then I throw it into a template and hand them a draft and say, here, go read this. We'll talk about it when you're done. The way that I work with clients on any kind of consulting, really, but particularly for handbooks, is we set up usually 2 to 4, depends on the state. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less, 60 to 90-minute meetings where we're going through section by section so that I hope that they understand that their rights and responsibilities as an employer, without giving legal advice. I'm not an attorney, you don't give legal advice, but from the perspective of HR, what they can and cannot do. And then I also am able to have those conversations of, these are one-on-one meetings. They get to be vulnerable. They get to say, this feels scary. This feels like it's not in my budget, or this is what I really would love to do for my team. I really have clients at both ends of the spectrum when it comes to things like benefits and culture and how they want to treat their team. I have the ones that want to have their employees lock their phone up in phone jail in the mornings. And I have others that I have to put safeguards in their policies because I feel like they're going so far the opposite direction. I'm like, you might not want to give free dentistry to your employee, their immediate family, and all of their cousins and aunts and uncles and all of the, you might want to put just a little bit of a limitation in there, pull it back just a little bit. You want to make sure you can see patients too. So as much as I love working with those clients, and I do have them from time to time, I also make sure that I'm like, this is a little above industry standard, just so you know. If you want to do it, fantastic, we can make it work. But let's make sure that you're going to be able to set boundaries if you need to. And I'm able to give them that help. I also, whenever we're going through these conversations, I get to learn a lot about their leadership styles. I get to learn how they're feeling as far as confidence with talking with their team. I hear what their problems are, and we're able to put in policies, first of all, but then I also try to give them some of that guidance. I had a client recently that had bought a practice 3 or 4 months prior, and she was wanting to get a handbook in place for this particular practice, and she was struggling to kind of lead her team. She said that she had I think it was a hygienist at the time that kept coming back from lunch later and later and later. And she's like, I don't know how to address it, but I really need her to come back on time. But, she's a hygienist and they're so hard to come by. And I'm just afraid of losing my team. And I'm afraid of messing this up. And I talked her through how I would coach that hygienist or how I would start that conversation. And she comes back the following week for our next meeting. And she's like, it's like I have this new power. I'm like, yes, the ability to ask for the things that you want and make requests of your team is a fantastic superpower. And it wasn't as scary as she thought it was going to be, but I'm able to give them some of that guidance and confidence outside of having a policy, a 50-page manual of things that you can use to lead your team. That's fine. It's good to have. It's necessary for, covering yourself, but it's really the other side, that confidence as a leader, that is the part that really drives me.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think even today I was having a conversation with the lady I work with. I was like, as a leaders, we have to understand that it sometimes is needed to have those difficult conversations. You can't run away or hide from them. And that's one of the challenges she has because she's a new owner of a practice. And I'm like, you gotta sometimes sit down and just have those conversation heads on. You can't keep pushing them under the rug and thinking that they're just gonna solve themselves. It's just gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse. So
They don't. And what happens is not only does that one particular team member that you're having an issue with gets worse and worse and worse, the rest of the team starts to either realize that you're not actually going to hold them accountable for anything, or they get frustrated that you're letting this person do things that they're not getting to do. And so they leave either direction, or you end up with this mass chaos on your hands. And it's a lot harder to come back from that than to just have that little conversation. I promise it's not as scary as it sounds.
Well, as a dentist, I have to give you a small. I got to give you a compliment, man. Your teeth, super nice, super nice.
That's funny. I have a cleaning on Monday morning, actually. I know.
Well, take it. Very good set of teeth. Love it.
I appreciate that. I have a very good dentist. He has an excellent team.
There you go. Well, the one thing I wanted the next thing I want to ask is, you're obviously doing the HR stuff, right? HR is a challenging topic. And as I'm sure as somebody that is a business owner, you found the company as an entrepreneur and somebody that is an entrepreneur dealing with HR, dealing with dentists. How do you overcome some of the challenges you're facing within your business? Now you're giving advice to all these people. Where do you go to get advice? Or where do you go to kind of help you overcome the challenges in your business?
So I have 3 worlds that I live in. I have dental world, HR world, and speaker world, because that's the other side of what I do. As I speak and I facilitate, I speak at associations. I do smaller workshops with intact teams, or if they're doing like a team retreat. I love to facilitate, and I love to help build those teams and coach leaders and have some of those face-to-face interactions where I'm actually getting to share that information with a larger group instead of just the one-on-one. It's a bigger impact. However, that is definitely a different business model. And so from the consulting side, from the speaking business aspect, all of that, and then also just even within the HR world, because HR is very broad. And I'm niched in the profession that I serve, but I'm not so, like, there's other parts that I don't necessarily handle myself. Like, I don't do global HR. And so if I have somebody who has practices, in Canada and in Washington, for example, there's a limit to what I can do. So I find my people, just like you find your people. I find my mentors. Just like you've created this platform and this space where people can find mentors that are dentists as well as people who are outside of dentistry. That's one of the things that I love about some of the organizations I'm a member of. I'm a member of National Speaker Association, for example, and I find people there who speak on topics that I speak on, but maybe for a different profession, who have a slightly different business model, who give me ideas. I have sounding boards and mentors and people that I can have those conversations with when I feel like I'm stuck on something. And that really helps both from the consulting aspect as well as the speaking aspect. And same with my HR. I built my own community of HR professionals, my entrepreneurial HR professionals, who are all aspiring or current independent consultants. And we have about 3,300 members in that group. So I always have resources. Yes, I subscribe to databases for policy, but if I ever have questions about something, I know exactly where my California employment law experts are. I know exactly where my total compensation experts are, my HRIS people. I find the people who do the things better than I do and go ask advice. I ask advice from the experts, which is one of the things, like I said, I appreciate about Dentment platform is that y'all do have experts on topics that are there, because dentists taking HR advice from other dentists sometimes doesn't work out so well.
Absolutely. Well, I told Master to ask the next question, but I have a question because you talked about your speaking engagement and you do a lot of speaking. Oh, this is my research. You are a president-elect of National Speaker Association. Is that correct?
No, I'm the immediate past president of the Austin chapter of NSA.
Austin chapter, yes.
And then I'm on Chapter Leadership Council. There's a National Speaker Association at the national level has a team of volunteers that we help mentor the other chapter leaders. There's 30, almost 40 chapters around the country of NSA. And so as a past president of one of the chapters, I'm one of the members of CLC. I think there's about 13 of us that mentor awesome. A couple of different chapters each. Yeah. And so I love that role. It's so much fun.
Well, so what I want to ask you, when you do this speaking engagement and you go into different places, you do this speaking engagement, what is the common question that audience ask of you about the HR? Like, what is some question that you're frequently people ask you? Hey, like, and then what is your answer to that?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know if anybody's ever asked me that question before. And mind you, I do speak in and outside of dentistry. So I do have some organizations that I facilitate workshops for as a certified everything disc workplace facilitator and 5 behaviors of a cohesive team facilitator. I have organizations I partner with to deliver that type of content. And so not everything that I do is like dental HR specific when I'm speaking. Sometimes it is on disc or 5 behaviors. I have other partners that I may build courses with. I did one recently on strategic thinking, from tactical thinking to strategic thinking when it comes to being a leader and a supervisor, and how to coach your team members to do that. It was a 7-hour workshop, really, really fun. And so I get a wide variety of questions from audiences because I don't have like a one singular topic that I speak on. It is all going to be culture-based, leadership-based, HR-based to some extent. But it's not like I have my one specific topic, like marketing, for example. I think a lot of times I get questions that are in the realm of I'm having friction on my team. I call it dental drama. I'm having dental team drama whenever I speak with dental practices. There are some occasional compliance questions, or there's some common things that I see people get wrong about, paying for training time, or whether or not we can tell people they can talk about their pay. But I think most commonly I get the questions about my team members can't get along, or I have this one person and I'm afraid to say anything because I'm afraid to lose them because of the way that the workforce is right now. What do I do? How do I handle that? And so it's really around that productive conflict and the diplomacy and being able to communicate what your request is, what you need from your team member without everything completely falling apart.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Kara.
Go ahead, Masood.
So yeah, I was gonna ask you, always curious, like I've never talked to someone in HR, and every company that I worked in, HR was the last department that I saw before I get fired. I got fired 5 times. So I
No.
don't be afraid of people like you. Yeah, I mean, there's no offense, but every time I saw an HR, I got fired. um,
Okay.
Imagine you start out with a company that's kind of like a startup clinic. They're getting their first employees, and like they have one receptionist, and they're pretty early. How do you set the culture, and how do you make sure that you set a system that as that company grows, they stick to those cultures and it helps them thrive? Because we have a joint venture, me and Milad, small joint venture, and we've said it over and over again within our team that if we had an HR, all of us would be fired. Like we say that literally. Yeah, for real. So what's the culture that you usually like advise on following?
So that's one of the places that I like to start. I have a model that I created for leadership decisions back in 2021. It's called CLIMB, the CLIMB model for leadership decisions. And the C literally stands for culture, and looking first through that lens of, is this the kind of leader that I want to be? Is this the kind of company that I want to build? If one of my team members was talking about their job to somebody else in their profession, somebody who might be a future employee of ours, what would they say to them? And is this the type of environment that I want to create? I always like to start there. And that's when I created this model. It's what I realized I was doing every time I would talk to a client about their issues. I tended to have some similar format of, is this actually what you want to do? Or what outcome are you hoping for here? Then going through the L being your legal analysis of whether or not you can actually do this. Because if you can't, then the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. I look through that lens second of, is this something that's going to be compliant for us to do? Do we need to talk to an attorney about this? Do we need to bring in HR, bring in an advisor to answer this question? Do we need to consult our handbook? I had a conversation today actually with one of my larger practices that I work with. They have several locations and they have a couple of people that are on their HR team. And one of them was asking that question of, well, don't we just consult the handbook? Well, yes, and there's some things that might have changed at the state level or something else that we need to consider. So yes, the handbook's a great resource, but sometimes you have to look at other things that your handbook's not necessarily going to say to you. The next is going to be your issues and outcomes. What could happen if I make this decision? What could happen if I initiate this program? What could happen if I allow this team member to do XYZ? Whatever the situation is, M is going to be, now that you have identified those issues, mitigating risk or managing risk. How can I best protect the practice if we do XYZ to prevent those things from happening, if possible, and to at least try to navigate toward the most positive outcome or the desired outcome? And then the B in CLIMB is your balance and buy-in. And that can actually be impactful. When I was building this course with my friend recently, we were using this model as one of the cornerstones around it. And this was presented to a group of supervisor level leaders where they don't have the ability to change policy. They don't have the ability to do things that are outside of what the organization wants, but they're still leading a team. And so balance and buy-in could be getting balance getting buy-in from the team that you're supervising or leading, or it could be getting buy-in from the leadership team, the C-suite, or other people that are on your team. There's a lot of places there that you'd have to get buy-in, or a lot of directions that could go. The balance side, though, is this good for the organization? Is it good for the team? Is it good for myself? And so as a dental practice owner, you want to make sure that there is some level of balance. Not everybody's going to be happy every single time. And if they think that, then they need a reality check. So there are going to be some times where you make decisions that it might be in a little bit better interest of the team than it feels like it is for you personally. But overall, it's in the best interest of the organization. That's what we do in HR. We're not supposed to be the last person you see when you get fired. We're supposed to be advocating for the organization and advocating for the business. And so for me, that sometimes as an HR business partner, that sometimes means I have to make some hard decisions and have some hard conversations of my own. I have to talk to the doctor and say, you're the problem, or this person that you love so very much is the problem, or whatever the case may be. So I sometimes have to implement that same strategy whenever I'm advising with that balance and buy-in. But I feel like if you're just starting out, if you look through something like the CLIMB model or some type of lens that starts with culture, keeps compliance in mind, and really thinks strategically through what could actually happen if I do this, and how can I do this in a way that's in the best interest of the practice, the team, and myself, then I feel like that buy-in is a much easier piece. I feel like that's a great place to start with building that positive culture. We all have taken those classes that say, oh, well, you need a mission and vision statement and some core values. Yeah, you do. But that's not all you need, because core values typed up, put on a wall, or talked about, day one on onboarding and then kind of discarded aren't really going to help you build that culture that you want. You really have to live it and drive that culture and have somebody that is that culture champion. And it starts with the leader. The leader goes first.
Yeah.
And do you think
That's
do you think an owner that's just
go ahead,
starting out the company, are they capable to do the HR themselves? Like, how early should they approach you and be like, Kara, like, help me out, I'm stuck? I mean, I feel like I want to fire all of my employees.
Hopefully before they get to that point. If you're starting a practice and you don't have team members yet, this isn't like an acquisition. It's ideal to have a conversation 3-2 months in advance. I will sometimes get practices that, hey, I'm about to hire my first team member next week. I need some help. What do I do? I'm like, well, you need a handbook. It would have been great to start with that. I don't think we have time to put that together, but let's go ahead and, see what we can do. And at the very bare minimum, let you know what you can and cannot do whenever it comes to bringing this person on, and we'll get the other process started. Acquisition, same thing, usually about 2 to 3 months in advance. 6 months is a little early. The day after you sign is a little late. So it really, if it's a person who's got a team that they are already working in, they've already hired people, they're having a problem, hopefully before you get to that I want to fire them stage, because the number of times that I will talk to practices and say, oh my goodness, I've got this team member and she just cannot show up for work on time and I've absolutely had it and I'm going to fire her next week. I just want to know how to terminate her. And I'm like, have you had a conversation with them? Have you told them what's going to happen if you show up late again? No. Okay, well, yes, that is a good reason to terminate somebody, but you got to actually follow a process, and you do need to have a little bit of documentation in this case. You do need to make sure that they are aware that they will get fired if they continue with this behavior, whatever it is. Of course, there's also times where you might have some like gross misconduct or some reasons why you are going to terminate immediately, and that's fine. We handle those too, but generally before it gets to that, oh my gosh, I want to fire this person point is ideal, because after you've done it, there's not much you can do when you're looking at trying to mitigate an employment risk. If you're looking at mitigating lawsuits and things like that, whenever you are past that point where you've already terminated them or it's really about to come to a head, there's not a lot of time to really build that out and protect yourself. And so ideally a week or two before, but I work with clients in all stages of that process. I had one that I talked to, one of my clients that I've been working with for several years at this point, that I talked to this week, where she knows that I'm available, but she had a situation last week that this person, she was going to have a coaching, or she wasn't planning on terminating them, was having a coaching conversation. This person got very disrespectful and very rude. And she ended up just telling her, to leave. And it was kind of an automatic, it happened. There wasn't a time for her to, call me up and work out a strategy. So we worked on it, past that. And what does it look like now with that unemployment side of things? So yes, we can work with it at any point, but there's more you can do if you are proactive about it versus being reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why is, Kara, that's something that I'm super like, it's somewhat confusing to me, because I have worked with, some big name DSOs, right? I have worked with them. And why is this process of like firing somebody so complex, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, you're the business owner, you know, you're not really connecting with that person. So why is that process sometimes so challenging to just let them go? Like, is that a legality of it? Why is this sometimes become, they're like, oh, we got to write them up 3 times before we can fire them. Like, why is that process? Like, what is the reason behind that?
So here's the interesting thing. Every state except for Montana is an at-will state. So technically, in any state, you can terminate somebody without notice for any legal reason. And it's the legal reason part that trips people up. There are some reasons that you couldn't terminate somebody, membership in a protected class, for discussing their pay, because that's something that's a protected right. There's some policies where they say, well, I wrote it up and I put it in my handbook. Well, that's great. It's still not a legal policy. So you can't terminate for that reason. That could be problematic. Some states are a little bit different than others when it comes to that as well. In general, though, and there's different schools of advice. You talk to various attorneys, and again, I'm not giving legal advice here, but you talk to various attorneys and you'll get kind of a similar situation as you do dentists, where you have one patient and 5 dentists that'll give you 12 different diagnoses, right? Kind of get the same way. There's different schools of thought and different ways that different advisors will approach this. Some will approach it and say, you don't have to give a reason, so don't give a reason. Just let them go and don't say anything. And others will tell you, yes, if you do that, they will make up one, or you don't have a leg to stand on if they do come back and say, you fired me because of membership in protected class, whatever, discrimination, so on and so forth. You also, at least the lens that I look through it, because I work with a lot of smaller practice owners who are cognizant of their unemployment rate. Unemployment is generally pretty automatically awarded if you just let them go and said it wasn't working out, not a good fit. They have to be unemployed through no fault of their own. And if you have somebody who is actually committing some egregious, gross misconduct, or something that is truly a reason to terminate somebody, you should have that conversation with them, give them that notice that if this behavior is not corrected, then this is what's going to happen. And the next time they do that, or, whatever your process looks like from that perspective. If you have something in your handbook, you of course want to follow that. If it's something that's less egregious, like tardiness, for example, you're not going to fire them the next time they're tardy. That seems a little drastic. And sometimes it's case by case basis of what really the situation is. But if there is a real, true, concrete reason to terminate somebody, then you should terminate them for that reason. Because then whenever the unemployment office asks, whenever they go and file for it and they say, why was this person fired? You can say, this was the specific reason. And you want your one good, solid, specific reason, not here's the 16,000 things they did wrong this last year. They don't care about that. They don't want here's the things that I found out after they left. They don't care about that. They care about, why is this person without a job? And what actually triggered the incident of, I'm going to let you go now. And so having that reason can help you avoid paying unemployment if it's one of those cases. Now, if you're laying somebody off, or if they truly weren't a good fit, and I've had this happen in the last year or so, newer practice owner hired somebody, wasn't a great fit, but they knew it was their problem. That was something that they did not thoroughly vet this person. They hired someone who wasn't competent at the job. It wasn't like this person just flat out lied or anything about their skills. They didn't conduct a skills assessment. They didn't do reference checks. They didn't do background checks. They didn't do anything to really show that this person wasn't a good fit for the job. And so they knew it. And that was a different situation. They were fine to just say, go file for unemployment. I'm not going to contest that. And so there are those situations as well. But in general, unless, like I said, you're in Montana being not the only state that's not an at-will state, you can just let them go. There just may be some things you don't really want to have to deal with afterward. I'm always a fan of documentation. Like with patients, you do your patient documentation. And just like with patients, where you're not writing it for the patient or yourself or your team, you're writing it for the jury that might have to read it in 5 years. You want to take that same approach to writing HR documentation, being factual, being thorough, who said what, when, who was present, what was the results, so on. Making sure that you have that is going to give you a better case against things like an employee trying to sue you for a wrongful termination or discrimination, or filing complaints with various entities, Department of Labor and EEOC and so on, and even unemployment.
Wow. So actually, one friend of mine actually ran into this situation, and I want to kind of get your kind of thought on it. And I think it's so, for kind of other dentists that may be going through the similar situation, I think it would be good to kind of hear what your thought on this. So actually, a dentist friend of mine bought a practice. The office manager that was there for about 14 years. And within the first 3 months of him buying the practice, he's like, man, I absolutely cannot work with her. She's super rude. She doesn't trust like anybody. She's being disrespectful. And then out of nowhere, he fires her, right? And then she actually goes and file a complaint with the state board. And the state board comes after him. for that. So I was actually shocked when he called me and told me that. Like, what is the legality to that? I just never knew that, someone can just pick up the phone and file a complaint to the state dental board saying, hey, like this happened to me. And the state dental board actually like followed through with it. Like they assign an investigator doing all of that. I was like super shocked about that. Like, what's the protocol on that?
Well, and that's more of a dental board question, and so there may be some other compliance people that are better to ask that question specifically. But just in general, from my understanding, those agencies do have to come and investigate whenever there's a complaint, and it might not be a hard investigation. It may just be a, hey, we got this complaint. We just want to check a few things out. You're fine. You're good to go. I don't know what the complaint was in this case, and so it's not as much as I can speak to there. But I've had something similar happen with Department of Labor several times with clients where like the employee got fired. And so they decided to go and file with the Department of Labor saying that they are owed, back wages for overtime, or the doctor didn't pay out what they were supposed to on final pay. And then sometimes that does trigger an audit. A lot of times at the state level anyways for Department of Labor, there are random audits that they do come in, and they will, and a certain percentage of the businesses in the state get audited in most cases, in most years. COVID being an exception, I'm sure. But sometimes that can be triggered by somebody reporting things. I actually had one during COVID that they ended up with the Department of Labor audit because their team member had gotten COVID and she had already used all of the paid time that they were required to give. And then she ended up getting it again a couple months later and said that, she wanted to take the time off. And they said, you can, but it's going to be without pay. And she sent a text message to the other doctor of the practice, a husband and wife team. So she sent a text message to the wife's phone unintentionally, calling her a derogatory term for a female dog. But it was a text message she was intending to send to a friend that accidentally talked about her boss. This, what is not paying me for my time off. I have COVID, this or that. So they fire her for that. But she goes and files with the state saying that she got fired because she had COVID. And that was not the case, but people can file and say what they want. They doesn't make it true, but they can do it. We try to avoid it because it's a hassle to deal with, but they can go file for anything they want. So yeah, the state came in and did a Department of Labor audit and audited their, their pay and practices and their timesheets and all the things that went along with it. And they actually came out mostly clean. It was funny. They had seen me speak a couple of years prior and had been doing all of the things that we had talked about. And so they were actually pretty clean on most of it. There was one little thing that they were doing that is something that I don't think a lot of practices either realize, or the consultants that are working with them don't realize that this is a thing, but they weren't paying an overtime premium on bonus pay. There's different types of bonuses, discretionary and non-discretionary. And you can say all you want that, it's at my discretion to give a bonus at all. So they're all discretionary. No, if you have actual metrics for them to hit, goals for them to hit, a certain cadence of whenever you deliver the bonuses, that actually is something for your non-exempt employees that you have to pay an overtime premium if they hit overtime during the bonus period. And so that was one thing. I think it was something like $1,200 that they had several employees that had worked overtime and didn't get the overtime premium for that bonus. And so that was the only thing that they were able to find, which is honestly, it's a pretty good outcome for a DOL audit. But all of that was triggered by an employee who got fired for not having COVID. It wasn't that, promise. It was because we didn't check our text messages before we sent them.
That's crazy. The one thing that I wanted to ask you, I mean, with all the work that you do, I mean, I'm amazed by how much, whenever I get in, I feel like I do so much stuff, but when I listen to somebody else's stories, I'm like, wow, they're doing a whole lot more.
Oh, but that's when I get the best stories.
I know. What has been the most, like, for your kind of like with everything that you're doing, what's the most rewarding part of it for you? Like, what has been the most, like, what do you, like, you get an outcome and you're like, man, that feels good. Like, what has been that for you?
When I actually hit that goal of helping them build a practice worth working for, when I get to take a practice that is struggling to find and retain good team members, that the leader is struggling to be able to get the team to do what they feel like they need them to because they're lacking systems or they're lacking policy or they're lacking confidence as a leader. Or in some cases, they feel like they aren't able to, deliver a certain amount of benefits and they don't they're really looking at it in the short term of this is what it's going to cost me. And I'm like, yeah, but this is what your turnover has been costing you. And whenever I can work with a practice leader who's in that situation, and then like the year or so after, I get to talk to them again and they're like, oh my gosh, my team has stayed with me. We've been so productive this year. I'm really feeling like I'm in a great place. We're successful. We've got these goals. I'm going to bring on an associate in the next couple of months. I'm just like, yes, they're building that practice worth working for, the practice that people want to come and be part of the team and they want to stay, and they really are in line with the mission that the practice is trying to accomplish, what the patients they're trying to serve and the community that they're serving in, because the leader has put their team first and their team has put the patients first, and they're just all on that nice cohesive same page. And I swear this does happen. It really does. And it's really exciting to see.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Go ahead, doctor. I was going to ask, how should the employer position himself towards the employees? Like, should you be friends with the employees, or should they fear you as kind of like a monster?
No to both of those. Well, it depends.
It depends. Like, I think there has to be somewhat of a balance, but one standard that I have since I've started my company, the way that I position myself towards employees, I become very much friends with them as if they're my buddies, like, the kind of buddies that you send reels to every night, and like, you get pretty chatty and stuff. So that's how I've been treating it. And every time that I want to have a hard conversation and things like that, I try to do it from other people's channels, like especially when it's going through chat. So I don't do it myself, but I get one other employee and be like the person that's basically in charge of like the project manager. I'll be like, you send this message. I just get his Slack, and then I'll just send the messages myself, but in his shoes. You see what I mean? So is that, am I doing the right thing, or am I messing things up? I feel
First of all, you may be setting yourself up for a compliance issue if somebody ever does come back and tries to sue based on something. Just an FYI, like I said, not attorney, not legal advice, but just an FYI, if you're sending it as somebody else and that's ever discovered, or the employee
to see this.
Do what?
I hope my employees don't get to see this.
I would take it or leave it. I don't know if this is live or if you're able to clip it or not, but yeah, I would not, first of all, that publicly. I have a presentation I'm doing this year. It's in August at Dr. Latran's conference in Houston, and it's called Like, Share, Lawsuit. Some of the things that people say in public forums that are going to get them in trouble, that might be one of those things, just reconsidering. Anyway, Doctor, I would not do that.
I'm taking you with me. I need my buddy there.
I would not do that. First of all, it's okay to be friendly with your employees. You want to be able to be somebody who that is approachable, that is relatable, that is not trying to terrorize them or have some level of fear. But there is a power dynamic whenever you're the leader, especially if you're the business owner, and you have to be aware of that. That even if you're sending them reels at midnight and they're saying, "Oh yeah, that's fun, haha, it's cute," they may also be sitting there going, "Oh my God, he won't leave me alone. I keep getting these messages and all it is a reel, and I feel like I have to answer it because it's my boss and it's the person that signs my paycheck." And they're never going to tell you that because you're the person that signs the paycheck. There is some level of a power dynamic, even if you feel like you're friends with them. Sometimes they feel like they have to. And I'm not saying that y'all aren't actual friends. I know that there are situations where you are working with somebody who you're friends with. And I know that there are practices where they have people that work with them for 10, 20 years, and they went to their daughter's wedding and they sent them on vacation at the 20-year mark, and all of the amazing things that can come from building that relationship with somebody long term. But it's still a professional relationship at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, you have to make hard decisions. The difference between, your team and your friends that are not employed by you, or that you don't have to fire them. You don't have to discipline them. And you're already, it sounds like, seeing some of the stickiness there where you don't feel like you can bring something to them. You don't want to be a leader that's feared or one that's their bestie, but you do want to be one that's respected. And so you can be kind and empathetic and have friendly conversations that are not solely about work. You should. It's actually better for productivity because people are not going to be there in work mode, productive 100% of the time, 80% of the time. It's usually around 65, 70% in most cases is a pretty good number to shoot for. Unfortunately, there are many team members who are only engaged like 15, 20% of the time. And so that's what you're trying to avoid when it comes to that. But so you want to be able to have that dynamic of feeling like you're relatable and approachable and that they can bring things to you. But there's a huge difference in that and being friends with them. And if you're also at a point where you feel like you can't bring an issue to the team member, you've gone definitely too far into the friend category. You want to be able to have those tough conversations and not feel like you've got to go through another channel or feel like you're making somebody else the bad guy. Delegating via abdication is what that is called. You're not just offloading your responsibility as a leader to coach people and get them motivated for productivity and get them to be able to want to do that work. That's one of your roles as a leader, is to develop people professionally. And if you're not able to do that because you're being friends with them and you're pushing that off on their supervisor or on somebody who's not even really related to their work, first of all, there's a lot of confusion there. Second, that's going to end badly for you at some point. And third, that's really not you stepping into what you are capable of as a leader. And this is, like I said, it's one of the things I love working with doctors, is because I feel a lot of them are that way. I have some of them, I have some that are like, we're so glad to have this handbook because we're just going to tell them to go to the handbook, or we're going to tell them that you told us that this is how it had to be. Anytime they have a problem with something, we're just going to say you said that they had to do it. I'm like, okay, that's a strategy. I don't know if it's the best one, but it is a strategy. You won't be the only one to do it. I'm sure there are thousands of employees across the country that completely hate me and have never met me, and there's no friends in HR. That's okay. I'll live with it. But it's not the best strategy as a leader. And if you have to lead this team for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years, you probably should work on the leadership skill and being able to step into that respected, relatable, not authoritarian, of course, but having some authority, being authoritative and being able to direct people in the work that you need them to do.
I'm gonna ask you one final question. I know you want to. I know you want to. If you want to take a sip of your wine, you can go right ahead.
It's coffee. It's coffee. If you follow me on social at all, you know I'm a cold brew girl.
What? How do you think AI is like a big thing, right? The AI has become this next. Do you think that the AI is going to change how dental practices do HR? Do you think the AI is going to do anything to help them with the handbook? Can you just give it to the chat GPT? Give me a dental HR handbook. Like
No,
how?
we'll try
Yeah,
it. Believe me. No,
yeah.
not yet anyway. We're pretty far off from that. And even at that, AI still hallucinates things. I actually just read an article today, a Time article about a study that's been conducted. It's not peer reviewed yet, but they're working on that process. But that's been conducted on people who have the ability to think critically and how it's declined with AI. Like even such a short amount of time. They had, I think it was like 54 or so people write articles, write essays, like SAT prep essays, doing it with ChatGPT and doing it without ChatGPT. And their mental capacity to be able to really think and process declined significantly with the ChatGPT assisted essays. They got to a point where they were originally kind of giving it prompts and helping to tailor it. And then as they continued to write more essays, they kind of just got to the point where they were just taking the easy route and throwing a prompt in there, letting it ChatGPT do it themselves. And so I kind of wonder where we're going to go with it from that perspective, first of all. Second, I know that there's going to be a lot of tasks that you can automate with AI in the future, and the future's already here. The stat that I recently heard is that worldwide, something like 83 million jobs are going to disappear by like 2027. And these are like white collar entry level type jobs that the AI is going to be able to accomplish, which can be good and can be very scary. But same with leadership. I feel like if we're going to completely abdicate our responsibility by delegating it to AI, we're going to end up running into problems. We are still going to need people who understand what those codes are for the insurance, even though you have a system that's doing it whenever something doesn't work the way it's supposed to because your side messed up or the insurance company's AI bot messed up. You have to have somebody who knows where the problem is and how to fix it. You have to have people who are still there to be able to, read through the conversations on the phone that AI is having and the assessments that come out of those things and really put that human element on it. So I do think we need to have human eyes on AI for at least the next 3 to 5 years. And I don't know even past that if it's going to get good enough that we can completely just delegate everything. But I do think it is going to make some things easier and some things more challenging. And one of the things that I feel like it's going to make more challenging is how we work with our team when it comes to training and managing their processes, their SOPs, and whether or not they're actually accomplishing what we want them to. So one of the problems that I see a lot of is that doctors are really hesitant to spend a lot of time and financial investment training their team. You're going to need people who can actually implement the AI. You're going to need people who manage the AI, and that's a new skill set for them. That takes more training time, and you have to pay them for that training time. Any time spent in training, whether it's mandated or otherwise, is going to be paid time. We also aren't used to managing people who are in like what we do with the creative fields, managing remote employees. And I think that's a struggle for some practices that, we already struggle managing people who come up and show up at our office every single day and have a certain checklist of things they're supposed to follow or processes they're supposed to follow. We can check and see if they're getting the things done. It's harder to do that whenever you're in an environment that some of the work they might be doing is literally monitoring what AI is doing or creating something with it. And we don't always have the desire to stretch to that or the ability to stretch to that. It's something we're going to have to work on doing, I feel like, in a lot of the healthcare professions, because that's a different type of work that you're having to manage and process that you're having to manage. And so I think we're going to get to a point where we have to figure out where that gap is between the skills that our team currently has and the skills they need to. How are we going to get them there? And then how are we going to monitor the results whenever they are there? And yes, AI is going to do some of that for you too, but you still have to be able to understand what the output is there and make sure that it's even something that's accurate. So we can't completely delegate all of our leadership roles, all of our HR to AI. And yes, believe me, I have tried to get it to write me a handbook. It doesn't do that. I have tried to get it to write me certain policies. It doesn't do that well. I had it write me an in-house dental policy where the team has insurance and the doctor wanted to be able to provide a certain amount of services to them, but they were, wanting to have something in their handbook that said if they have insurance, you can choose this policy. If they don't have insurance, something else. I think it was an out-of-network practice. They were able to do this. But it came back with a policy that a PPO practice would never be able to implement because it was talking about waiving the copay. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to have policies that are insurance fraud. That's fantastic. I really feel like we can't just completely delegate that to AI just yet. We're not there.
All right, good to hear. Good to hear. Did you hear that, Masood? Because that's all he does. He gigs about the AI and stuff. So
I love to play with it too. And like I said, I'm in that space of like thinking futuristically of what is our workforce going to look like in 2, 3, 5 years? And how are we going to get there? We keep saying, well, it'll free our team up to do this higher level work. What is that higher level work? Like, well, they're going to be able to spend more time with the patients. And I'm thinking, so we're already complaining about payroll and benefits. We're saying that AI is going to take over things so where we can spend less on payroll and benefits and that the AI is cheaper, but we're still going to keep the team in those roles and pay them that to do more of, okay, yeah, maybe, sure. I don't know that we really know what that higher level work is yet or how to get them there. And that's what I love working with practices on right now. And that's some of the content I'm creating right now, presentations and things that I want to work on, is being able to help figure out what that looks like for your practice and get people to that point. But it's going to take a mindset shift. And sometimes we get a little set in our ways and it's really, really hard.
Well, Ms. Kelley, I want to truly, anyone that comes on our podcast, I'm super grateful that you took the time, you came on here. I'm a student of the game. I'm always learning. I don't own my practice, but I work with a lot of practice owners that this is the exact things that they challenge with, that they're having a hard time figuring those things out. I work with a practice owner now that I decided to take a leap of faith and came to Tucson to help her grow her practice. She just bought it 2 months ago. And she's like, I'm just figuring it out. She comes to me like, Doc, what do I do? I'm like, you're asking me things that I don't know. So it's like, but I think this is why I think, and I said this to one time to Miss Jill as well. I think the things that you guys are doing is doing such a good for our dental industry. You guys are making our time easier so we can focus on doing dentistry. So I'm super grateful for you that you took the time. You came on here. I know it's late hours for you. So thank you so much for doing it. I really appreciate it so much.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, it's been a pleasure. It's just much fun as I figured it would be. And I'm really honored that you invited me.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
You're amazing. See you.